Welcome. My name is Kirsten Bartles, and I have the great privilege and honor of serving as the Chief Academic Officer at Akadasia. And we are here today with another of our fireside chats, this one covering another incredibly important topic, and that's dealing with workplace anxiety for educators. We have two very exciting speakers with us today. The first's name is Enji Alamana. She's a concept based curriculum and instruction trainer and presenter, and a happiness coach based in the UAE. She's a certified concept based curriculum and instruction trainer and presenter, a happiness and mindfulness coach. She's worked in the education field for 13 years, in which she had various teaching and leadership roles in American and IB schools. Inquiry, conceptual thinking, and backward planning are part of her daily personal and professional practice. Angie works collaboratively with teachers to further develop the curriculum with the aim of providing a holistic, concept based inquiry education. She coaches teachers and teams in developing their teaching and learning practices to ensure that students' agency is the driving force of learning. As a happiness coach, Angie believes that the pursuit of happiness resides at the heart of education, and she strives to promote happiness and well being in international schools through enhanced teaching and learning. Angie has a master's in education from the American International College in Massachusetts in the States and a certificate in international baccalaureate teaching and learning from Bethel University in Minnesota in the United States. So please join me in welcoming Angie. Angie, thank you so much for being here this morning. Well, for me, it's morning. It's 2 in the
It's
morning.
still
For
morning
you,
for
it's
me.
morning as
Thank you,
well.
Kristen. Yes, it's morning for me as well. Thank you, Kristen, so much. Welcome, everyone.
And our second panelist today is Rebecca Kane. She is the CEO of Aveksha Collective in Singapore. Whilst working in investment banking in London, Rebecca saw a number of employees suffering from stress. She decided to do something about it and set up an employee led well being network to increase support and awareness for mental well being. This voluntary role became a passion for Rebecca, and she has since set out to make a systemic change within the corporate well being space. Rebecca has completed an MBA at INSEAD, INSEAD, and has launched Aveksha, the Aveksha Collective, which is looking to improve employee mental health and well being for all businesses. So please join me in welcoming Rebecca. At least I hope Rebecca will be joining us. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you both so much for being here. I wanted to do this seminar right now because we're getting close to the holiday season. The semesters are wrapping up, or at least we're getting ready for a break. And I don't know about you, but holidays in my world bring more stress and more anxiety. So I thought this would be a great topic for today. And I want to start
Absolutely.
with a very, very basic question. Anxiety is one of those things we hear the term all the time. But do we ever really talk about what it means? What is anxiety in both of your opinions?
So if I don't mind, I'll start with that.
Please.
My co-founder of my business, who is a doctor, would want me to say that anxiety is a feeling of unease, like worry or fear, and it can be mild or severe, and it can have a huge impact on mental and physical health and your state, with symptoms including uncontrollable thoughts, panic attacks, heart racing, shortness of breath, increases of blood pressure, and stress hormones. Now, that's all well and good. It's good to have a proper definition and to sort of understand what it is, but I don't think that really captures what anxiety feels like. So I am someone that has suffered with anxiety on and off, and it was perhaps missed from my bio, but that's a particular reason why I have a passion in this area, because it's something I've really felt the effects of. And for me, anxiety can come in many forms, but it's that creeping feeling of dread about probably everything. You can't necessarily pinpoint what it is that's causing the problem. It can be tossing and turning at night, not being able to sleep because of worries racing through my mind. It can be overthinking every little thing, things that sometimes others might not see as important or a big deal. It just kind of goes over and over and over. And, you know, it can be that rising sense of panic, the tightness in your chest, the shortness of breath, and even leading to panic attacks. But I think it's so different for so many different people. And I think it's something that we don't talk about enough, is this difference between anxiety and an anxiety disorder. So we all have anxiety, right? Like, anxiety is a normal reaction to an uncertain situation. You know, if there's something coming up that I don't really know or feel comfortable about, I'm going to feel anxious, and that's okay. But when does that cross over and become an anxiety disorder? And that's really when it becomes chronic and when it begins to impact your everyday life and your ability to cope. And I don't know, Engi, if you have anything to add in terms of that difference between anxiety and disorder.
I totally agree with you. There's not, we cannot find one size fits all definition for anxiety. And I like to view it as an emotion. Like, we're happy, we're sad. It's an emotion. So we have to admit that we're anxious. Yes, we can be on the edge. Usually people who are anxious will feel on the edge. Yes, your heart would race. And this is, as you explained, it will go to the disorder side. From, like, because I'm an educator, I understand how it feels in a class. You're always on the edge. You don't sleep at night. Did I plan well? Did I prepare things on time? You feel that your mind keeps telling you negative things that are not true. And I think this is where I read about imagination as well, and I've learned that people who have anxiety, they have a high level of imagination, which can be positive in a way, but we have to address it. Again, it's an emotion, and you know, sometimes because when we work, we feel burnt out, and we ignore that aspect of life, that we are stressed. We just say we get away with it. Oh, the weekend will come. We keep on postponing when, you know, we will address it. So we end up being stressed, and we end up with physical symptoms as well. So yeah, I completely agree with you with that.
You know, it's interesting because the way we deal with anxiety can be very, very different, and sometimes we can try to laugh it off, or we won't admit that it's anxiety. And I don't think that I've ever admitted this to my husband. I hope he's smart enough to figure it out by now. I used to live in the UK, and we have 2 children, and when we knew that we were supposed to be there for 3 years. So we get over there, and the kids were little. They were like 5 and 7 at the time. And I started almost immediately when we arrived, in the back of my mind, this idea of flying with my children was something I didn't want to do. This was 3 years down the road, and I started thinking about, "Oh, hey, honey, wouldn't it be cool if we bought, like, a Land Rover and we drove? And we drove through Russia and then, you know, cross the Bering Straits and go down through Alaska and Canada." I spent hours and months of my life trying to convince my husband that it made more sense for us who speak, you know, only speak English, to drive through, you know, the backwoods of Russia than to get on a plane with my kids. Now, we did not drive back. I actually sailed back. I took the Queen Mary too, so I did get out of flying with them. But it was this thing where I couldn't admit to myself that
Absolutely.
this was this, and it manifested in this very bizarre idea that I had to convince my husband that driving literally almost around the world made more sense than addressing the fact that I was suffering from this issue that I needed to actually talk about.
And I think that's a really good example as well of where it impacts your day-to-day life. Like, there's one thing going, oh, I feel anxious about taking a flight with my children. A pretty normal reaction. I can completely understand that. But then it crosses that line where it goes, I'm actually going to go so outside of my way, my normal way, or just kind of being able to deal with the anxiety to avoid that thing. And it really turns into an avoidance behavior that impacts your day-to-day life. I think that's a really good, quite extreme example of how it can cross over from being a situation that it's normal to maybe feel a bit anxious about to how that actually then manifests in terms of behaviors and avoidance behaviors.
Yeah, and it actually shows how our brain tricks us and how we keep on thinking. It should be like we have this function to protect us, because we have to anticipate what will happen. That's positive. But when it starts taking control of our actions and reactions, it becomes very negative. And this is where we need to address it. And again, you said, Rebecca, experience. It's all about experience. Do we stop and say, okay, this is just a thought? I'm going through a new experience. I'm going out of my comfort zone, because this is, even with motherhood, as you now explained, Kristen, it's motherhood is all about, you're just trying to go out of your comfort zone. You're dealing with other human beings, and you just have to adjust your life accordingly. So yeah.
Well, I would wonder, I know how fast everyone else who was listening to this, when I said that I decided I wanted to drive from the UK back to the States, when they went, that's a really bad idea. The links I went to justify it were quite impressive, I have to say.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a journey that would be.
And it happened so quickly. I mean, you'd think that I would have at least waited a year to start obsessing about this, but no. So I think that the reason I wanted to share that story is I think it's funny now that I actually did take all this energy to do it, but we don't like to admit that, hey, okay, I suffer from these things too. Maybe not to the same extreme, but, or maybe to a bigger extreme, but mental health and mental wellness is such an important topic that destigmatizing it's vitally important. And I wanted to ask both of you, in your experience, what are the most common stigmas that you've come across associated with anxiety and mental health, and how can we address them?
So I think quite a common one, and one that I definitely really worried about when I was feeling anxious, is that there might be this perception that somebody suffering from anxiety is weak in some way, that maybe it's a character flaw within that person, and that they're not necessarily able to cope with day-to-day stressors and things like that. And I was so worried about this external representation that I hid it, or, like you say, wouldn't admit to myself how I was feeling. And actually, it's taken a very long time and a process, and me kind of getting very involved in the topic to actually realize that those things aren't true. And whilst there may still be stigmas out there, that actually somebody with anxiety is more often than not quite high functioning. They are often very strong people, because they're having to deal with everyday stresses as well as their own internal stresses that might be created or exaggerated from external things. And actually, when a person with anxiety is able to get that anxiety under control, there can be loads of positives from it. So for me personally, it's what drives me. It makes me so determined and dogged to get things done. And when I hone that in a way that is productive rather than negative, that's fantastic. I'm incredibly productive at getting things done. I've gone and set up my own business. I do all these things that I'm proud of. And that is a large part to do with my anxiety. And Engi, I love that you mentioned about sort of imagination. That's something I'd never heard of, but actually rings really true. Like I probably do have a very vivid imagination. I'm quite creative, and that's not anything I'd necessarily realized was related to anxiety, but yeah, it almost certainly is. So it's a really interesting point that you made.
Yeah, exactly. Because many cultures, they believe that it's you're being negative, not only weak, you're being negative. You just think negative things. Yeah, come on, you can step it out if you want. And this is actually what made me more interested in reading more about it and educating myself about anxiety, because it's as you said, it's strong people get anxious because you want to achieve more, and people who feel anxiety, like they want to feel that they're normal. And this is a big misconception, that because you are normal, again, it's an emotion. So like when you feel that you struggle to talk, and from my experience, sometimes we have the courage to talk, but the people around you will not verify your feeling. Like they will say, okay, you just need to pray more, or you need to eat healthy food. It's some aspects, like we can make more connections to other things of in our daily life and our our routines and other things, but it's a discussion that needs to be addressed, because it's definitely does not reflect a negative or a weak or a sensitive. I do not like the word sensitive as well. It triggers me out when say you're so sensitive. You notice little things and you overthink. We keep on labeling and judging. And again, from in education, we should, like, we are trained that we should not label kids. We should just accept everyone as it is. But as adults, do we do that? Do we give each other this benefit of the doubt? Like maybe it's just a thought that you have, but how are you dealing with your thought? We focus too much on teaching, content and getting, aspiring to get more certificates or learn more. But when do we address our mental well-being? When I haven't seen many families addressing like emotions and how the kids feel, and this is something that we try to advocate for, and that's why I love different. I love PYP because it addresses the holistic child. And from that, actually, we learn that as adults as well, we need to stop judging or labeling anyone, and we need to address and accept every emotion. And I think just when people know that they're not alone, it's very helpful.
Well, and now I would argue, and I think most people would agree with me, that our educators, the people who we are here talking, about and for, they have a level of anxiety that, is, I don't want to say unprecedented, because we've been using that word almost nonstop for the last 2 years. But the pressures that are on our educators and our students now. I mean, back when we were face to face, I was dealing with students who were suffering from major issues with anxiety, and that was before all this happened. That was before people became, in a way, more insular and more isolated. And I don't think there has ever been as much pressure on our teachers to balance their lives, to make sure they're engaging their students, to try to help their students deal with anxiety while they're trying to deal with their own personal anxiety. What advice, what thoughts? I don't really know where I want to go with that question. I just wanted to bring the topic up and see where you two would like to take this massive issue that our teachers are facing right now.
One thing that I learned as an educator, and this is very common amongst the teachers who I worked with or I've read about even, we like the word perfectionist. We love the word perfectionist. And I was reading Dare to Lead, Brene Brown, and it stopped me when she was addressing the word perfectionist, because she said, like, we have to be mindful of what we tell ourselves. And this was a big aha moment for me, because we want to do the best. And we say sometimes, yeah, we're perfectionists, we just want to do more, we want the best for our kids, but this is not how it's meant to be. And like, I really like that, and I worked a lot on myself with that advice. She advised others to shift the mindset to saying that I'm striving to be better, and this is a life-changing approach. It's a little thing that we might think, okay, it's just a word, but words impact us. So the first thing I would advise everyone is that just to monitor what you tell yourself, monitor your self-talk, who you are. Like in happiness, I love the idea that we go through a training first, like we stop any labels, we decide who we want to be, and with that we have to address different emotions, we have to monitor who we are and how people perceive us, and then we start saying, okay, what we like, what we dislike. So again, it's all about the self-talk and the words we tell ourselves. And I use something called the 80% rule. Like 80 is better than 100, and there are many research on like the 20% that we keep on exerting effort on, it's not always the right thing. Sometimes it's just a waste of time. And when I work with educators, like you're right, Kristen, because the last couple of years we've been addressing well-being, we've been dealing with teachers who are highly stressed, especially here in UAE, when we have a high level of expats. They were not able to go back to their home countries, and we had to be a family, and you had to go and start checking on teachers. Are you okay? Are you talking to someone? And the advice would be, when you're in a leadership position, it's very difficult. Sometimes people don't want to open up, and it's how also leaders are addressing that. How you're being humble enough and non-judgmental, so teachers come and talk to you. It has different aspects, and we have to address that more, because we deal with students who can be anxious as well. The unknown was for everyone, and everyone is living still in it. We don't know when we're going back to normal, and we keep on saying, okay, it's coming some, but we just have to know ourselves and focus on what we can control. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's this question I love, because Avexia Collective, the business I've started, is all about teaching people and sort of learning how to proactively manage our mental fitness. So our ability to kind of cope with everyday stresses and to be mentally strong, rather than kind of talking about the negatives of mental health. It's about strengthening ourselves. And so we have a huge list of activities and information that can help people with managing anxiety and stress and all other sort of impacts that stress can have on you. A lot of these things are sort of things we know about, things that are common sense, but we don't always know about why it makes a difference. And I think that's really important. So we know that exercise is good for our minds as well as our bodies, but why is that? Other than, I guess sometimes I feel good after it. But actually there's huge amounts of research and evidence that shows that physical activity boosts mood, it increases self-esteem, it improves your sleep quality and your energy levels, which has a massive impact on how you're feeling and your mental fitness and toughness. And it reduces cortisol, the stress hormone in our body. And it can really help with, even quite severe cases of dementia and depression as well. So it has a really amazing impact on our minds as well as our bodies. And I referred to sleep there. That's another key thing. If you only get to do one thing to help yourself, I think it's making sure you get as much good quality sleep as you possibly can. We know that feeling of a bad night's sleep. We're grumpy, we're irritable, kind of struggling to focus, get distracted really easily. But it actually, goes much, much deeper than that. And bad sleep regularly can have a really long-term impact on our mental well-being and our anxiety and ability to manage stress. And some people need different levels of sleep, and absolutely there's variation within that. But making sure we have a good environment to sleep in, shutting out light and noise, a comfortable bed, not too hot, not too cold, all these type of things, good sleep hygiene as well, can all really help us have a good night's sleep. It's boring. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but going to bed and getting up at a consistent time is one of the best ways that we can ensure our sleep is good on a long-term basis. So those are two kind of things that we know are good for us, but I think it's really interesting to share a bit more about why they're good. And then some other things that touch on it are socializing, making sure you're getting time with family and friends and loved ones that are maybe outside of that stress-inducing environment, so that you can really kind of feel those connections and those bonds to people around you. And I think a really important thing, this touches on what you said, Engi, is taking time for yourself. So all of us might have different activities that we enjoy that help us relax and de-stress us. That could be meditation, it could be journaling, it could be, for me, it's taking my dog for a walk. That's my kind of decompression. But also within that, I think there's the kindness to yourself, Engi, like you say, the turning some of these negative cyclical thoughts we get ourselves into positives and catching ourselves in those patterns. And I think journaling is a really, really great tool for spotting patterns and beginning to try and spot these things. Something we do here in Singapore by Avexia Collective is meditation walks, guided meditative walks, to give people a break away from the office or from the house if they're working from home, to get outside in nature, because actually there's a huge amount of evidence about the impact of nature on our psyche and well-being, even to the point of, if you can't get outside in nature, just having a picture of a natural environment can boost your self-esteem and your mood and how you're feeling, or a plant on your desk or anything like that. So there's loads of great tools and techniques out there, even without getting into the detail of sort of some of the positive psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy exercises, which, Engi, I'm sure you're you're much more of an expert on than me, where they can give you specific exercises and techniques that can help. Just sort of lifestyle changes can already make a massive difference.
Yeah, speaking about meditation, you mentioned meditation, and there's a lot of misconception as well on how this should be done. It's people think that we should, join a group or we have to be connected with a special routine, and actually it can be really simple. One thing that I advise, the first advice that I give everyone is to breathe. We ignore breathing, and it has the most significant impact on our lives, because we have to let in more oxygen, and the time we spend breathing is a precious time, and we often start our days with a very busy schedule. I want to do this and that. And sometimes I've tried this myself for a couple of years, and I thought it was weird when I tell people that I don't like to talk in the morning. When I tell my kids that I cannot have a conversation in the morning before I literally have to have a 45 minutes time for myself. This was my nature, and it was not perceived positively. But by the time I've read that, it's very healthy to have some time for yourself in the morning once you wake up. And we tend now to check our phones once we wake up. You feel that it's a demand that we check our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we keep on moving from one app to another. This causes more stress. So I advise everyone to start literally once you wake up, to start breathing. Sometimes I just stay in bed, start breathing, and then go to the actual practice. It's very healthy, and with breathing comes thoughts. Allow your thoughts to go. You don't need to argue with your thoughts. You don't need to stop and judge yourself. We speak about people judging us. We need to make sure that we are, just like as you said, Rebecca, we're kind to ourselves, and we're not judging our feelings and emotions. We accept ourselves as we are, and this is one thing. When every year I have, since we're speaking about New Year's resolutions, every year I choose 2 or 3 words that I want to live. And one year I had the word kindness, and it started by, I just want to be kind to myself first and then others. I would say it was very challenging, especially when it came to myself, because the self-blame. I want to do that. I want to make sure I'm doing everything for my kids. I want to multitask. I want to achieve better in my job. So it just take it one step at a time. With the lockdown, no matter what's like, as a parent, we're just reflecting. I was cleaning up, and I found some of our charts that we did, and it was all about skills. We did not discuss content. We did not discuss it. It's all about skills. It's all about how we are equipping our kids and ourselves with skills to deal with life. And it doesn't have to be the future, just dealing now with life. And as teachers, the biggest advice is look at the way you're teaching, look at the way you're planning. I love concept-based because it promotes agency. With agency, you give more voice to your students, and you don't stress yourself. You plan very well, you prepare your class and setup very well, and then eventually you let go and your students will take over. So instead of standing for a long period of time, just talking and lecturing students, you give them more autonomy and they will take the lead. So it's a win-win situation in the class as well, because teachers, they are very stressful. Everyone now demands everything from them, and they have to prepare the students for testing, for the parents, for everyone is asking teachers to do better. And teachers need to know that they are trying to do better, be reflective, take it one step at a time, and look at the way you're planning and the approach you're following, because it might be the cause of your stress. I often ask teachers, can you tell me the process of your planning? And I find out many things that they say. I said, that's why it's difficult for you. It can be easier. And then we discuss how it can be easier for us. So it's the mind shift of looking and reflecting on what we do every day and how we're helping ourselves as well.
Yeah, and to jump on that, so I mean, when you think about it in the sense of how can teachers be expected to be the best teacher they can be, to impart all this amazing support and knowledge and wisdom onto children or future generations or other people if they're not feeling good themselves, right? You've got to put yourself, it's not being selfish by putting yourself first, because ultimately you're putting the people you teach, sort of, you're treating them better as well if you are in a better space. And I think, touching on another point you made, like, it's amazing how much more critical and harsher on ourselves we are than we are on other people. You know, I would never speak to a family, friends, even just a stranger in the street the way I speak to myself. That's just madness, isn't it? There's no reason that we should be harsher on ourselves. And then, sorry, a third thing that I wanted to kind of piggyback off the back of Engi that you said is the breathing. It's such a powerful tool. And actually, I'm going to give everyone on the call now a really, really quick breathing technique that has been a complete game changer for me. It's called box breathing. Engi, I'm sure you're very familiar with it. But it's really easy to do at any point that you feel panic or worry rising in you, because it just immediately de-stresses you. And you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and you hold for 4 seconds. So it's inhale, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, exhale, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1. And you repeat that sort of 5, 10 times, whatever you need. And every time I use it, it brings that kind of rising panic back down and just immediately kind of makes me feel more clear-headed, more level-headed, and able to tackle whatever situation has caused me to panic.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I mean, I know that breathing is so critically important. Zara posted something that I think we really should touch on, and that's this idea that now that we are living and working in the same space, many of us, especially our teachers, have blurred lines between what is home and, what is work. And we feel like we need to be on, we need to respond right away. So there's this anxiety that because our students are anxious, because their parents are anxious, they're sending us these messages. We need to respond all the time. And, maybe some people have this idea that yes, there need to be those boundaries again, but how do they set them? What do they do? How do they approach this when you're living and you're working in the same space and you're not the only one who's occupying that space?
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for people just to manage expectations, to help bring their anxiety down? What would you suggest?
I think it's a really, really important question, and something that not only teachers are grappling with at the moment. I think everybody that has had to work from home is really struggling with this. And I mean, Engi may have more wisdom than me on this. I don't think there's one answer that's going to suddenly kind of fix this issue for anybody. But I think it's probably an amalgamation of lots of little tweaks and changes that we have to make to ourselves and to our home environment and our work environment and situation. I have personally always found it really helpful to put in place a bit of a structure. So I start my day with a walk with the dog, and that is me kind of gearing myself up from wake up and my own time into work mode, and then I'll come and work. And then I'll quite often end my day with actually a little outside walk as well. It might just be 5 minutes, but it just kind of structures my day. And so then I know that, well, when I come back from that walk at the end of the day, that's the end of my work day. And that's kind of me compartmentalizing that. I think for the specific instance of teachers of having to respond to parents and children, I think actually almost putting in some structure around potentially almost like virtual office hours, in terms of when there are concerns or questions, I'm available for these times, these days a week, to chat about them, to jump on a call or whatever it might be. But outside of those times and outside of normal working hours, I won't necessarily be able to respond because, and you can explain, it's important for me to make sure I'm decompressing as well, so that I'm in the best possible position and mindset to teach your children effectively. And most people, I think, are fairly understanding of that. If somebody's not, then maybe that's a separate discussion to be had. But if you are offering 2 or 3 times a week, say, specific office hours, that should be regular enough for parents or children who have a concern to pop in, to ask questions, to make sure their issue is being addressed. But also to give you a break and some time away. That's my personal suggestion. I don't know if there's anything more specific that you have, Ingy.
Spot
No, I think
spot
that's
spot
great.
on spot on, Rebecca, because it's our choice. I believe in the choice theory. It's our choice to check the emails or messages or not. And again, like when it's our choice when we check our phones once we wake up, it's the same procedure. So if you're in bed and you woke up and you read this email from from an angry parent, your day is gone. So, and most of the school policies that they never require teachers to respond in 1 hour. No one will tell a teacher to respond in 1 hour or in the afternoon. But we often, it was always in the policies, but we often go out of the policy, and we just want to be passionate because we don't have time. We don't have time. So I look, it's easier said than done. But it's really doable. Like when teachers look at the schedules, and we just set some time during the day that this is the time for responses. Communicate with the parents. Again, once you open the door, you open the door. So I always tell the teachers that if you open the door, you open the door. You have to make sure you keep your boundaries, and after work hours they are yours. They are for your family and for yourself. And it's a decision. Every administrative person will support that. There are like usually in policies there will be like a maximum of 48 hours in which teachers need to respond to parents. This is the maximum that I've seen. So I would say, like, yes, be on top of things, but don't overburn yourself with everything else. If it's not responding to others, it's just sometimes less is better. Sometimes when you check one or two ideas, it's better stop, because we want to plan many ideas, give the students different learning experiences, and sometimes it's overwhelming for everyone. Even as colleagues, we sometimes we need to set boundaries with colleagues as well. Like, it's good to, like, I found this idea and I want to message you, Rebecca, and sometimes you should just say, no, in the afternoon, I like to do 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'd rather have this conversation later. And many teachers, to be honest, they started doing that, and they are respected. They are, like, everyone now understands this. And parents, I'm a parent myself. I do not dare to message, or when I can email in the afternoon, because this is the time that I'm not working, but I'm not expecting anyone to respond to me within an hour. And you sometimes you might even find teachers apologizing. Do not apologize for something that is not supposed to be. Like, you responded to the email within 24 hours or 48 hours, depending on your school's policy. But just, again, be kind to yourself and set these boundaries. It's very simple to say it, but when it comes to actually organizing our time, as you said, it's very important. It's not easy, but it's important. And like in many schools, especially here in the UAE, well-being is a big focus, and we have well-being committees. If you don't have one in the school, initiate one. Start a well-being committee, because this will be the driving force of, okay, how are the teachers feeling? What's going on? Who needs help? Who needs support? Who doesn't have a family? If you're teaching abroad and you need more connection, we tend to have these conversations, and it's helpful. And also engage in something that you like. Teaching is my hobby. And one day, one of my sisters said, like, you read about kids, you discipline kids in school, or you teach kids in school, you go back home, you're dealing with your children. What do you like? And this taught me a lot. And when I started the happiness, it started because I wanted to do something different that is not always about curriculum and instructions. And I found out that it connects very well, because everything that I studied on how to, implement positive discipline in the classroom, is like, you need it as an adult. So look at what you're preaching and what you are advocating in your classrooms, and make sure you're applying that on yourself first.
Well, teachers, more than most, I believe, and you can tell me that I'm wrong, they internalize so many things and they feel guilty. Oh, okay, Rebecca, your idea of, I'm really stressed right now, just taking the time and doing the box breathing, that's a great idea, but and I think one thing that is really important to understand as a teacher is if you establish your clear boundaries. You can set an automatic response to those emails. Please know that while I view your email as very important, I will not respond after 6 p.m. If you do that, or if you model that, okay, when I get anxious, I do this box breathing to your students, what you're doing is a couple things. You're showing them that you're a person, which I know may sound really strange, but think back to when you were in school and you ran into one of your teachers at a restaurant or a grocery store. And it was shocking to you that your teacher existed outside of that school. People
Mm.
forget that teachers are people. So establish those boundaries and then demonstrate self care and demonstrate how to deal with anxiety, how you deal with anxiety, because then you're going to help your students learn to deal with anxiety. I think teachers often don't take the time to practice what they preach. They tell their students about these things, but do they actually do them? I just wonder, what are some of the common mistakes that you think people make when they're trying to deal with anxiety or not deal with anxiety?
So, one that I have seen fairly commonly is what I'll refer to as kind of self medication, be that through alcohol, even TV, Netflix, kind of using something to sort of numb the pain. It could be through prescription drugs, obviously other types of drugs. Not that you know there's other issues with that as well, but alcohol and TV, gambling, anything numbing your kind of pain and the feelings in the moment, particularly with anxiety, where it's an overwhelming kind of rush of emotions and feelings. Quite often people turn to these tools because they're quick and they're easy and they make you feel good in the moment. Now, they have longer term implications, and often will end up making the issue worse. Um, I know for me personally that actually any form of drinking really exacerbates my anxiety. So when I am going through a bad patch, which will happen because life is stressful and stress is normal, I will have more stressful periods of time, and in order to allow myself to be stronger at coping with those stresses, I stop drinking and I have a break from that, and I put in key lifestyle changes that I know help me, be that exercise, be that breathing techniques, etc. But that's something that I see people making a mistake with when handling on their own. And the other thing that kind of comes off the back of that is there is often a fear about seeking professional help for anxiety, depression, anything like this. There's that fear that going and admitting it to a doctor is, it labels you as sort of crazy or one of these kind of negative stereotypes. And B, that even if you do talk to a doctor, if they do recommend some medication, that, oh, you don't want to take medication because you don't want to be drugged or you don't want that kind of impact. Now, that's actually not how a lot of these medications work. And when balanced with lifestyle changes and therapy, then they can be incredibly, incredibly powerful. And writing one of the tools at our hands off with kind of just because you don't like the idea of it or because of stigmas, is actually just reducing potentially your ability to get better because of the different offerings out there. Saying that, it is really important to not just do medication on its own and expect that to make the difference. You do need to pair that with therapies, whether that's talking therapies or other types, and lifestyle changes. It's when you do those three in conjunction with each other that they have the biggest impact. And just doing one or two, and expecting it to solve the problem is unlikely to happen. It's really balancing the three and finding a balance that works for you as well.
Well, what do you say to people who look at this idea that I should be able to do everything on my own? Why should I need to seek, help for anxiety, for depression? You know, I should be able to handle this. Other people can handle it. So why would I be so selfish as to go and do this when my profession is a teacher, I'm supposed to give going and seeing someone about my mental health. Number one, that's a weakness. And number two, that's selfish of me. How do you get people to change that mindset? Because it's number one, not selfish, and number two, critically important. We were
It's also
talking.
it's
Oh, go
also
ahead.
not correct that other people can deal with it. You know, actually, most people are not sharing that they are struggling,
Yes.
and they are not sharing that they might have gone to their doctor and be having conversations separately. And you would be really surprised if all of that was on the table. I think everybody would be shocked about how prevalent this is. It's actually more normal to be suffering, particularly in today's environment with the pandemic and working from home and all these really difficult situations. It's much more normal to be struggling with that than not. So this message we tell ourselves that, oh, well, I'm the abnormal one because of I'm struggling with these things, or this is difficult for me. That's actually not true, and it's harmful. It's a really negative, harmful message that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, my advice is to read about it. Start with reading. Usually we educate ourselves, so read about it. And because the more I read about anxiety, and I've learned more about myself, the people around me, and I was able to help myself and other people around me. So it just read more about it first, and know that you have the right to talk. We cannot ignore that we are human beings. We need the social interactions. We need someone to tell us that we can do it, because one of the big mistakes that I like when you ask the question, Kristen, I keep on hearing, like, I tried everything. People who say I tried everything, and anxiety can become a habit. Like, yes, it's an emotion, and if we need to break this habit, it takes time to break one habit. If anyone is dealing with a child, you need at least 21 days of consistent interference. You need at least 21 days to change a habit. I do happiness challenges, and people will be very excited to join. I always like, it's a 1 month happiness challenge. People will always want to join. By the sixth day, people will drop, and then they will say, we tried everything. It's how you keep on working on yourself, how you keep on helping yourself, for at least 21 days. If it has to be more than that, but I mean, the minimum is 21 days. So after 21 days, it will become a habit. It's just like doing a diet, trying to lose weight. It's the same. You cannot just stop eating carbs for 3 days and say, okay, I tried everything, I'm not losing weight. And but because it's our emotions, and we were not educated to speak about our emotions, it became like something that I just need to deal with it. I shouldn't share. So we cannot have quick fixes, and this is something that I often find. And we cannot just go and take medicine. We have to understand ourselves. We have to look at our eating habits. Eating is huge, and that's where mindfulness changed from just a practice to a daily habit. Am I eating? Am I being mindful? Especially teachers, they have their snacks in between. Sometimes they even have it with the kids. It's like we have to have some time for us to look at the food that we're eating. We have to make sure that we're eating healthy food. We have to make time for it, because if we did not make our health a priority, it will eventually affect our mental and physical health.
Oh, diet is so incredibly important when it comes to everything. And it's interesting because when we get anxious, when we are starting to deal with these issues, we go to comfort foods. And it's amazing. They're called comfort foods, but they're probably the least healthy things that we can have. When I went back to do my master's degree, years after I'd graduated from undergrad, I was like, I need chocolate covered peanuts. And my husband looked at me like I was insane. He's like, you don't eat those? I'm like, I need them. And it took me a while to realize that this group of friends that I studied with when I was an undergrad, for some reason, we always had chocolate covered peanuts when we were studying for finals. And that became a coping mechanism to deal with the stress. And I hadn't had them in years. All of a sudden, I needed them. Like, no, I don't. This was a bad habit I got into, and there's some muscle memory going on here. There's a question in the chat that I think I'll read it to you, and I happen to like that they find relief with this. It says, every time I felt stress, I tend to eat ice cubes and notice that I got relief after. Does it mean that I'm experiencing anxiety? I think eating ice cubes and feeling relief is wonderful.
I think that's great. If I
Yeah.
wish I could have something that that wasn't high in calories and really bad for my body, that would relieve that tension.
Exactly. That's way better than chocolate covered peanuts. So
it doesn't necessarily mean you are experiencing anxiety. It sounds like you're experiencing stress, which is a normal thing. We will all have to deal with stress throughout our lifetimes, and it will be a continual issue. Sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's not so worse. And we react to stress in certain ways. Sounds like you have a fantastic coping mechanism.
I'm gonna try it.
Ice cubes are they're water, but water is healthy. It's the best.
Yeah, it's great.
It's the best thing to do.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, wait, this seems like there is a question, but actually they're giving us some really good advice.
Great tip.
I don't know who posted that, but thank you.
Yeah.
There's a really quick question that I noticed that is anxiety and depression the same? And I think
I was going to bring that up. Thank you very much.
I think it's important to quickly clarify. They are not the same. They're almost opposites in some ways, but quite often they come together in a diagnosis because one can sometimes lead to the other. Anxiety, as we sort of talked about earlier, is characterized by worry, by kind of sometimes panic, by often cycling incessant thoughts, and can be quite almost like energetic in a way. Now, depression is characterized by low mood, often numbness, and an absence of feeling. So in terms of kind of a spectrum, they seem almost on the opposite ends. One is very hyperactive and worrying anxiety, and the other is a numbness, a flatness, an absence of feeling, and sometimes low mood and very tearful and upset. But quite often, like I say, one will end up leading to the other. And so quite often people will get diagnosis of anxiety and depression. It's not because they're the same thing. It's because, for example, you might have anxiety, this worry, this incessant thoughts and panic, and that ends up leading you to feel depressed and low mood and upset and down. So they can be very hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree that it goes back to the terms we use with ourselves, and the sometimes we just label ourselves. I'm depressed. So what is that? Can we read about depression? Can we see if we have the symptoms? Can we see the difference between both? Are we taking a medicine that we decided to take, or that might lead to that? Is the food we're eating making us like unhappy in some way? So we just feel like we're giving up on ourselves. We don't know what to do. Sometimes when we feel helpless, we say like, I'm depressed. I don't know. I tried everything, but there's no way out of that. So they're not connected by any ways, but they can lead to each other. I agree with you.
Well, we have a lot of questions on the various things about, how do you manage anxiety in the midst of the pandemic? I know people are talking about when we get back to normal. I don't think we're going to get back to the way we were before, not completely. And I think there's some good in that. I mean, if you think about it, pre-pandemic, the idea that the three of us would be sitting at our homes having this critically important conversation with perspectives from literally all over the world, that wasn't something that would have happened. So there are some things that we're learning and we're growing and we're sharing together. But how do we deal with anxiety when it's an unknown? There's all these variants coming, and people we know, COVID is getting closer and closer. If you haven't had it, you know someone who's had it. So what tips do you have for just trying to manage anxiety in such an uncertain time?
It's a really tricky one. Again, it's not one that's got a silver bullet that's going to solve it all. My personal opinion is that we need to almost look at ourselves rather than the external world, because as I referred to earlier, stress is going to happen. Now, COVID is an unusual situation, but if it isn't COVID, it's something else. it's work, it's personal life, it's trying to balance all these commitments, whatever it is. There are external stresses that are going to happen to us. And so focusing on those things as an external thing, I don't think is beneficial. I think we need to look internally and understand, what can I do to make myself more resilient to these external things that hit us? Almost think of yourself as kind of, I don't know, a flag in the wind or something that's being bashed this way or that way. How do you make sure that you are standing and that you're waving your flag and you're not sort of blowing over with the wind and with these external things that impact you? It's more about that internal thing. And the ways to deal with that are to spend time thinking about what helps you decompress and what helps you de-stress. We've referred to a few of really great techniques here: breathing, meditations, walking, exercise, sleep. There's a huge amount of stuff out there you can research online. I'm very happy to share my sort of details afterwards if people want some basic tips and techniques. But really it's about looking at how you process stress rather than these external factors.
And if you're processing stress in a way that is actually beneficial and helpful to you. I have a friend who processes stress by shopping online. And it's not good.
So we speak about the avoidance zone and the anxiety zone, when these are very two important zones that we say, okay, I'm just depressed, I'm going to shop, and it doesn't help. Then you go and shop, then you don't nothing changes. So you need to address your feelings. You need to understand what's going on in your head. You need to understand your thoughts. You need to have a discussion with your thoughts. It may sound like it's not something that we do, but we have to speak to our thoughts. Are you a real thought? Are you an actual thought? Because what's anxiety? We're speaking about the future. We're thinking, what will happen tomorrow? What will happen? Will I get COVID? What will happen if I got COVID and I'm on my own? What will happen with my kid? It's too many questions taking place. And then one thing that I've really practiced very well with my kids and my family during COVID is just looking at the day. Let's be present. Let's speak about today. What do we need today? Do we have what we need for today? Can we manage today? Okay, yes. Then let's focus on today. When tomorrow comes, we speak about tomorrow. Sometimes this is when my thoughts take over my mind, I just have this conversation like, can you just focus on today? If today you need that and you have it, then move on. If you have a plan for today, then move on. We don't have to. Sometimes you just need to stop our mind from thinking of the future, and we have to stop our mind from thinking of the history, what happened before as well. So it's the other thing is that is the circle of control. What can we control? It's some people call it the circle of influence. It's really helpful. And sometimes we end up drawing an actual circle with others, and we'd go to, okay, what can you control now? You cannot control, and what you cannot control. Then once you write it down, you just focus on your circle of control. And sometimes I advise people to hang it somewhere, like put some notes around the house. If you're staying at home and you have to work from home, put some notes around the house. I have on my notes. I have some go-to things, like I train myself to have some positive words to just read. Once I start having negative thoughts or I start to become anxious, I just go and check them out. It would be very good if people shared their experience with others, and you have a go-to person. I have a friend who, like, when I lose it, I just message. I said, I don't need anything, just remind me of what we agreed on. And just, you need this reminder from time to time, and you feel that you're not on your own, and that's it.
Well, and you brought up something earlier that I think it's really important we get back to. Well, two things. About kindness, about being kind to yourself, and this idea of self-talk. Because, and Rebecca, you said this, you wouldn't talk to anyone the way you're willing to talk to yourself. We will beat ourselves up over the littlest thing. But when was the last time you said something positive to yourself? Like, hey, I did a really good job on that. Or wow, that was really had a good answer for that. Or I'm good at this. Or I'm smart. I'm whatever. I mean, compare the times in a day you call yourself an idiot to the times where you say, I'm smart, I'm clever, I'm capable. We discourage believing positive things about ourselves, and saying positive things about ourselves. How do we
Completely.
change that?
I actually want to give everyone on the call a challenge. And jumping off Engi's point earlier that you need to do something 21 days in a row, was that it? To make it a habit. So I want you to do this 21 nights in a row. When you lie in bed before you go to sleep, I want you to say 3 things about yourself or about your day that you are grateful for. Now, this is a technique from positive psychology that helps us kind of wire our way of thinking, and helps us go into sleep with sort of the last thought being a positive thing. And it's hard at first. It feels really weird. It feels uncomfortable, but you'll get into it a little bit more and it'll become more natural. And the 3 things can be big things or they can be tiny things. They could be, oh, I really liked the feeling of the sun on my skin today. Or it could be, I really like the way I make my friends laugh. It can be bigger things or little things. And I want you to do that 21 nights in a row, 3 things that are good about yourself or your day, and just keep doing it and try and make them different each time. And that's why it's useful having the about your day aspect in there as well. And just keep telling yourself these positive things and what you see about yourself.
That would be life changing, Rebecca. And I've tried it myself. And I would add to that, hang it, see it, make it visible for you, and add to it. Start with an empty paper and write what you're good at. Every time you try to notice, promise yourself that you will do it. And especially like when you ask Kristen this question, I've thought of myself as a mother. I wanted to do everything for my kids until my eldest turned 10, and I stopped and said, am I enjoying? I questioned the enjoyment part, and I calculated like how many years are left before he goes, and he was already in middle school, and I was like, did I enjoy life? Am I enjoying him? Teachers, are you enjoying being in your classrooms? Are you having fun? Because we deserve that. We deserve this fun. And I promised, I made a promise to myself that I will enjoy middle school. It's not easy raising 2 teenagers now. It's not easy. It's completely out of my comfort zone. But I go back to what I said. I said I want to enjoy. So I always reflect with myself. I say, am I enjoying? And then just again being kind to yourself. It's a practice. It's a practice when you compliment yourself, and you don't need. Even sometimes when people give us compliments, we even don't take them. Sometimes we're that difficult on ourselves. And we just need to see, okay, who am I? Ask yourself, who are you? Who are you from what you see, not what people tell you, because people don't know what you're dealing with. And just write it down. And if you don't like it, change it. If you don't like something, change it, work on it and change it. But please, like, we have to enjoy it's every day matters, every day counts. If you're thinking about, we had, like, if you think about this family trip that we want to go through and now we're stuck here, let's enjoy here. We learned how to enjoy being in a house together as a family with the limited workspace for everyone. But we learned some things from the pandemic, and this is where I don't think we need to go back to normal. I don't think it's meant to be like that. I think we need to move on and learn how to deal with uncertainty.
Well, I also think as far as the pandemic goes, it's not going to end anytime soon. I know that people don't want to hear that, but this idea that okay, it was only supposed to last a few months and it was only going to last till 6 months. Oh, it was going to be gone by summer. It was going to be
Yeah.
it's going to be here for a while. So, instead of just putting these things off because once the pandemic is done, you're going to. We need to shift and start taking care of ourselves now. And I know that a lot of people don't like the idea that, we've said exercise. Exercise is great. It is so critically important. And exercise can be something like going for a walk. We're not saying, go run a marathon tomorrow. Go for a walk. And go for a walk without your phone. Unplug. I mean, if you wanted to, you can listen to some good music. Great. Read a book. Awesome. Make sure the things you're doing are actually bringing you joy, and take time without feeling guilty to bring yourself joy. there have been several people who have asked questions, including our ice cube eating friend, about, do they have anxiety? Are they suffering from anxiety? I'm not bringing those questions up because we don't know you well enough to answer those questions. If you think you are dealing with issues of anxiety, we can't stress enough. Please, please, please contact a mental health professional.
Yeah.
Just have that initial conversation. Go talk to your doctor and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm not sure. Our ice cube eating friend brought up that they start to lose weight every time they eat ice cubes. I hope that means you're eating normal food and eating ice cubes, that you're not just eating ice cubes. But go talk to professionals, because you are vitally important to this world. You matter. Your students need you. You're making the world a better place. As one of our panelists said last week, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you have to practice self-love and self-care. So if you think you're suffering from issues of anxiety and depression that you can't manage, please, please, please go talk to someone. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of great strength that you are self-aware enough that you're willing to do this. And that's something that I just really wanted to make sure that I brought up.
I think it's important. And I think to add as well, for anybody that is in that position that feels like, oh, there's no point because I could never get better from the position I'm in now because I'm so bad. I am living proof that you can, right? I have been through really the depths of depression and anxiety. I have experienced many things. Everyone's experience is different, so I can't claim to have experienced exactly what you've experienced, but I have felt in that position where I thought it'd be impossible to come back. And now I am probably the mentaliest healthy I've ever been, and I am thriving and loving my life. And I've learned the positives that these things have brought to me, and I've learned how to cope with it. So please don't allow the concern that, well, you've got so many problems or so many issues, or that you wouldn't be able to come back from that place, to hold you back. Because whilst you may really truly believe that, it isn't true. And you can come back. And actually, the sooner you take those steps to seek help, the easier that's going to be. The longer you leave it, the harder it gets. So let's just take that initial step, go and speak to a doctor, a medical health professional, and get the help that you need.
Somebody is asking what we mean by self-care. Can we define self-care? And how do you stop it from becoming overindulgence? Is there something like proper self-care?
I think there are some things that sometimes we think of self-care that aren't. So like I say, watching just incessant TV and Netflix and all these things and just kind of blocking out or avoiding the issues is not necessarily self-care. But the way I see self-care, I don't know if there is a formal definition out there, I'm sure there is, but I see it as looking after yourself in a healthy way. So taking time out of our busy professional and busy personal life to do stuff that makes you feel good. That might be meditating, it might be going for a swim, it might be going for a walk, it might be exercising, it might be breathing techniques, it might be writing in a journal. I found personally that writing things down is incredibly cathartic. I saw somebody say in the chat earlier about listening to pleasant music. I saw somebody else say about starting your day watching affirming and motivational videos. These are good things that make you feel good. And that is what self-care is. It's what makes you feel relaxed and good. And actually, it's very, very hard to make that crossover into self-indulgence. If it's making you feel good and it's making you perform better at your job, sort of teaching other people and imparting sort of knowledge and wisdom, then that's great. If it's stopping you from engaging in any other part of life, that might be the point where it's a little bit too much. But as long as you're, turning up to work and engaging and delivering on what you need to do and your commitments, both professional and personal, then it's never going to be too much, and it's never going to be self-indulgent. It should help fuel you to do those things. It shouldn't stop you from doing those things.
Yeah, I would define it as you're talking now. I've thought of like, define it yourself. See what does it mean to you? Because I believe it means different. Like sometimes it can be quality time for some people. With understand your love language as well. It's very often that we don't know ourselves. So know what it means to you and what really matters to you. Because I would prefer like a one-to-one conversation. Another person can be interested in a group, outing or a bigger social interaction. Like define what it means to you, and it doesn't mean that you're doing it every day. There are some things that you do every day, but for example, it can be as simple as do you have a cup of tea or coffee without checking your phone? Do you just enjoy it? Do you take a bath and you just don't think about, you have happy thoughts, or we're always thinking of what we're doing next. It's how we are controlling our thoughts and how we're controlling the mind. I believe this is my biggest the biggest thing that I've learned is to control my thoughts. And self-care for me sometimes can be like I need to stop being a mom for a couple of hours. I need to go outside. And sometimes it's like I really want to be with my kids and just focus on them. So it's not even, we don't have to have a one definition and stick to it. It can change. But the most important thing is that we do not wait until we're burnt out and say, okay, who can we blame? Because we are responsible for our lives. We are responsible to make sure we empty the cup before it's completely full and then start spilling over. Yeah, I teach even my family what is my love language. You can speak about it, and you can have different definitions within your group as a team. If you're working in the school, if you have a well-being committee, or even within your team, what does well-being mean to you? What does self-care mean to you? Because sometimes we can just help each other as well and make time for each other.
Well, and there are a lot of people who are asking, how can teachers help each other? How can we deal with these things during the pandemic? And one thing that you can do is, if you're on FREEJOO, part of FREEJOO is that it's a community. So the idea that you're not struggling with these things alone, one thing that may be giving you anxiety is you've got a new lesson that you don't know how to put it online. Go and talk to other people about it, share resources, have conversations. You're not alone. So don't think that you can't talk about whatever it is that is causing you anxiety. And it may be that you talk to a friend or a coworker and they say, "Hey, this is something that maybe you want to talk to someone else." Someone said, "How can teachers help other teachers deal with anxiety without overstepping boundaries?" That's a really good question, and I guess it depends on what's being brought to you, and if you're in we'll let, our panelists who are way smarter than I am, um, go ahead and comment on this as well. But I would assume that if this is something that someone is bringing to you and you're not comfortable talking with them about it, that you should suggest they talk to somebody else.
Yeah, I believe in connection. And some people when someone is like is has has taken the risk to come and speak to us, you have to be prepared with some questions. You don't need to know much about other person's life, but sometimes it's the questions, and sometimes you even tell them you don't need to answer to me. I don't need to know the answers. And this is what we do. We don't need to know more about people's life. We just need to ask the right questions for reflection, and the other person can think about it and come back. Some people choose to mention a specific scenario, and then you will be able to help more. But it's as simple as just ask the right questions, and whatever the response is, it should not be judgmental. It should be like, be open, be kind to others as well. And I'm very it's very common as well, something that I've seen, like people will just like to give prescriptions. We're not there to do that. You cannot tell a person what to feel and what not to feel. Do not allow anyone to tell you how to feel and what not to feel. We teach kids about feelings. We have units about emotions, and then we come to ourselves that we should not allow anyone to define our emotions. They are emotions, and they are there for a reason. So it's a two-way thing. Also, know, like, I always check who's around me. Am I surrounded by negative people? Am I surrounded by people who only complain? And because this is something that also you need to break. We tend to, the staff rooms are full of lovely stories, and they can be full of negativity as well. So you can interact, but you don't have to participate. You can just listen. And sometimes if you don't want to listen, do not listen, but do not allow anyone around you to be hurting you while you're not noticing. It can be like a kind of a comment that someone passed on. And that's why essential agreements are very important at the beginning of the year. We can always do that anytime when we feel we need that. We do them in the classrooms. We tell kids how we want the year to go, what is expected from everyone. And it's very important that we have amongst our teams essential agreements in which we say, okay, how we're dealing with each other. And we have to make sure the culture is safe as well for everyone to talk and share.
Well, I absolutely don't want to do this, but my dear colleague Roy is sending me messages in the chat that we're almost out of time.
Yes.
I would love to continue our conversations, and maybe we'll do another one of these in the future. But now I would like to ask you for your final thoughts. I don't know who would like to go first.
I don't mind going first. It's going to be a bit of a repetition, but if you think that you might be experiencing symptoms of anxiety, depression, or anything related, I cannot express enough how important it is to go and speak to your doctor or a mental health professional. As much as myself, Nengi, and I'm sure so many other people are willing to talk and give pointers and tips, there is nothing better than seeking proper professional help and going down that path. It can be so scary and so daunting, but it will be possibly the best thing you ever do in your life. And I cannot express how important it is. And also, don't be so harsh on yourself. We've said it a few times today, we wouldn't talk to other people like we talk to ourselves. We're so critical of ourselves. Give yourself a break every now and again. You are only human. We all make mistakes. Sometimes things are good and sometimes things are not so good. And that's okay. That's part of the rich tapestry of life and of being human. And, think to yourself like you would think to a friend if they express to you how you're feeling. And try the breathing technique we spoke about earlier and the gratitude technique before you go to
your
sleep.
21-day challenge.
Yeah.
Yes. I would say that always tell yourself that your current situation is not your final destination. It's true. You like whatever you're feeling now, it can be addressed. You can move on. We've all experienced it, and we can go out of any vicious cycle. We just have to be kind but determined. We have to make sure we are persistent. We do not give up because it's us. You have to work on yourself more. If you care about like 20 students in your class, you deserve that. You deserve that self-care. You deserve that love. You deserve especially in teaching, everyone is on a different journey. It's a process. We keep on talking about learning is a process. Life is a process as well. It's not meant to be. You're not meant to be perfect tomorrow. You're not meant to be perfect at all. You're just meant to be a human and to live and be better than yesterday. If you're trying to develop your skills as a teacher, it's like take it one step at a time. When online learning took place, people there were so many ideas, and sometimes they're overwhelming. You just take it one step at a time. Set goals for yourselves and just build on them. And as Rebecca said, make sure you fill your gratitude journal. We had, as a family, we worked on a gratitude jar, and it was very helpful to help ourselves, even if we're stuck in, in our houses.
Well,
Just
and I
quickly
want.
to add,
Oh, go ahead,
sorry,
please.
if anyone's looking for any specific techniques, I know Ingi and myself have shared a few tips and techniques today. If you are on Instagram and follow at avexia.collective, the spelling is in my name. We often share regular tips, techniques, little tricks, breathing exercises, etc. So if you found those things useful and you want to learn a few more, then that's a nice free way to access them. Sorry, Kristen.
Abby, can you put that up on the video, please? Abby is our wonderful behind the scenes individual, and hopefully she can scroll it across the bottom of the screen. And you can put it in the chat for her to see it again. There we go. Thank you very much. And I just want to thank our panelists and teachers. Thank you for all you do. Please remember to breathe. I know we've said some things that seem to be, pretty basic. Get enough sleep. This from the person who is, talking to you from 3:20 in the morning. I promise I'm going to sleep a lot when we're done. Exercise. Eat right. And yeah, I know that, the chocolate cake is wonderful and, Cheetos are great, but junk food, it's designed to make you crave more of it. So give yourself that 21 days to not do these things that you know are bad for you. Because we need you to love yourself so you can help our students. Set those boundaries. Take time to disconnect. And yeah, if you want to watch a show or two on Netflix, great. If you're watching the whole season in one night, that's avoidance. That's the kind of thing that Rebecca was saying not to do. But please, please take care of yourself because you are so incredibly important. As a parent, teachers like you shape the lives of my children. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have inspiring teachers in my life. So thank you for all you do. Try some of these wonderful techniques. Please do Rebecca's 21-day challenge and email me and let me know how it's going. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or through FREEJOO. There's ways to get in touch with me as well. And now I'm going to introduce the fabulous Roy, who is going to wrap everything up and tell you how to earn your certificate. I make him do all the heavy lifting. I just get to have the fun and talk to the amazing panelists and read your questions.
Thanks a
Hi,
lot,
Roy.
Kristen. Hi, Rebecca, Ingi. Thank you so much for sharing those wonderful, wonderful insights. Really super helpful for our audience today. I just want to remind everybody how you get your certificates for this webinar and this fireside chat. So don't forget to go to freejoo.com. So make sure that you enroll into the course itself. We will have a video recording of this session that you can rewatch within the course. And after you complete the course items and just go through it, then you will receive your e-certificates by email. Okay, it's that simple. I'll just share my screen really quickly just so that we're very clear on how you can actually see this course. Okay, I'll share my screen. So here, when you come to freejoo.com, so just go online and then click sign in. When you sign in, if you don't have an account yet, just make sure you sign in. Don't worry, I'm already signed in. And then when you come into FreeJoo, it looks like this. Go to Skill Ed and you'll see a list of all the courses that we have. Again, you get 20 free courses for free members. And if you're a paid member, then you'll have access to all the other courses that are paid as well. Look for the Managing Workplace Anxiety course. It's over here, and then just enroll. And then the course itself looks like this. So just be able to kind of enroll here, go through the simple lessons. It's very easy to go through. And then you can watch the video. And then towards the end of the course, you will get your certificate, or after you complete the last lesson, you'll get your certificate by email. Okay, so it's very easy. Just sign up on freejoo.com, enroll into the course, and then you will be able to receive your certificate. Okay, so very simple.
And
And
of
then
course, we'll give you some more tips and strategies that maybe we didn't talk about in today's webinar as well.
absolutely. And we can probably add those and probably invite our speakers next time as well. So also don't forget, we have a bunch of events that are coming starting next year in January. So this is going to be our next event. I'll show it on the screen. So don't forget to sign up for our next event next January. And then from every week till then, we'll have a lot of webinars like this with courses and certificates accompanying them. So please don't forget to sign up and join to learn more and participate more in the community. Share your thoughts, ideas, and FREEJOO. And again, thank you very much to our lovely speakers, Rebecca, Enja, and of course, Dr. Kirsten. I know it's 3 a.m. there, but thanks so much for staying up with us. And to all our friends from all over the world, more than 35 countries all over here with us, thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of Akadasia and the team, we thank you and have a great day. Thank you so much.
And happy holidays.
And happy holidays. Yeah, happy December, everybody. Thank you. And see you
Thank you.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.